Welcome to Beyond Referrals, the podcast exploring how trust, growth, and client relationships in financial services are evolving in the digital and AI age. I'm your host, Emily Armstrong. Let's dive in. I am so excited about this episode that you are hitting play on this conversation with Ben Beshear. If you don't know Ben, well, you will in this episode. He is the CEO and founder of LiveWell Capital, one of the largest ensembles in Northwestern Mutual. They just hit $4.5 billion of AUM, and they're scaling every single year, adding more teams, growing the firm. And I loved this conversation because it was a real peek at what is behind the curtain of an engine of this scale. You know, I think we see teams as successful as LiveWell and we wonder what they're doing. Well, you don't have to wonder anymore because you're going to get into it in this episode. We talked about how he came up with the origin and the name of LiveWell and how that's translated to a really recognizable national scale brand. I think you're going to love his answer on his story of how this whole thing started. We talk about the 5 capitals being spiritual, relational, physical, intellectual, and financial. And a lot of people neglect the 4 capitals outside of financial planning, but LiveWell does not. And we talked about how Ben's personal vision has grown and evolved as his practice has since he started this when he was just a youngster back in the day. And one of the things I loved about this conversation was we looked behind the curtain of how an operation like this actually scales, because there's a lot of complexity behind the scenes. And so we talked about the 5 non-negotiables. And then finally, we ended this with content marketing as karma capitalism, meaning the benefits that you get when you are genuinely trying to serve people and teach them through things like content. We ended with the advisors who are going to win in the years to come versus the advisors who are going to struggle and get left behind. So this is a really good episode if you are someone trying to grow your own personal practice or build an entity like Ben has. Can't wait for you to listen to this. Hey guys, welcome back to Beyond Referrals. Today's guest is someone who I have admired from a distance for a long time now, and I'm genuinely delighted that he's sitting down with me today. I was first introduced to Ben Beshear in 2021. I was a staff member on a team within Northwestern Mutual's Mike Jones district. You might not know this, Ben. And Ben came in to speak. And I remember walking away and immediately starting to follow him and LiveWell Capital and what they were building, because they were doing things that no other NM teams were doing at the time. They were building their own content and really taking that angle of building the brand. And I fast forward to 2025. I'm at a ClientWise talk here in Denver, and Ben and Scott Sparks are leading the conversation. And I walked up to Ben and told him I love his brand. I asked him how he came up with it. And the story he told me just kind of stopped me, and we'll go into that story here. I'm going to let him tell you that. But Ben Beshear is the CEO of LiveWell Capital, one of the most recognized firms within Northwestern Mutual, with offices in 15 cities and $4.5 billion in AUM. He's a 10-time forum qualifying member. That's the top 2% of Northwestern Mutual advisors, if you don't know what that is. He works with Fortune 500 executives, entrepreneurs nearing exit, and retirees. And he is building something that most advisors only dream about. Today, we're going to get behind the scenes of the empire, the brand, the growth, the leadership. We're going to get under the hood and what it actually takes to build something that lasts. So Ben Beshear, thanks for being here today. Welcome to Beyond Referrals.
Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Me too, Ben. So I want to take the listeners back to when I introduced myself to you at regional meeting. This was only a year and a half ago, but it seems like it was longer. And I told you I loved the LiveWell brand, and I asked you, how did you come up with the name and kind of what's the origin story? Would you tell that story?
Well, I hope I tell the same story because I hope I told you the truth at the time. But the story
We'll see.
the story is I remember it. I've spent a bunch of time in my life in malls with my wife or my daughter, waiting on them to be done shopping, and I was sitting outside of Madewell. It was 2020, and I had this thought in my head. That's a good name. That at the time we were trying to rename or rebrand Beshear Financial because we were merging with teams, and we thought, let's take everybody's name off the door. Let's get everybody's ego in check. Let's have a brand that means something. And I had like this moment in time where I was like, live well. That could work as a wealth brand. I wrote it on a little piece of paper I had in my pocket. I had maybe 80, 90, 100 names that we had previously come up with, and this was way better than those. And that was the origin story of the name. Today, maybe it would be way easier because you could just ask AI to name your firm, but we did not have that option back then. So hopefully that was consistent with the story I told you when you asked.
That is consistent. You told me that you were shopping at Madewell with your daughter
Yep.
and the inspiration came to you that way. I think it's so cool. First of all, I use AI all the time, but AI cannot give you those kinds of ideas that your brain comes up with on its own or like receiving inspiration, from anywhere. I feel like inspiration's all around us. So at the time when you came up with that idea, fast forward to today, and that was only 6 years ago, what was your vision for creating a brand outside of your name? How is that, is that the same as what's transpired today or different, bigger?
Well, there's a couple of thoughts. First off, you think about the name. I'll start with the second part of the name first, Capital. At the time, if you remember, almost nobody had capital in the name. It was kind of financial or something else or group. We called it Capital for two reasons. Number one, I was watching Billions at the time, and the firm was called Axe Capital in the show Billions. And so almost everything I do in life is somehow connected to television. And second, we talk a lot about the five capitals. We all have five kinds of wealth. And so those kinds of wealth are spiritual, relational, physical, intellectual, and financial. And we talk about a great financial plan means that you have wealth in every form of capital, not just in capital number five, your financial capital. And so we thought Live Well tied really well into the word capital because we teach all of our clients about the five capitals. And the term Live Well was really about your financial plan being tied to your life. And if your financial plan doesn't mean you can live well or live a better life, it probably means you're not planning well. So that was the thought on what the brand meant, what Live Well meant, what capitals meant. And then the other thing that we were thinking at the time was in 2020, it was not really a thing to be a national brand or national ensemble yet. And I think 2020 did this funny thing that it knocked down all those walls where rather than somebody thinking, who might be the best planner down the hall that I could partner with, they started thinking, who might be the best planner in the country I could partner with? And we happened to just be in the right place at the right time where people were thinking broader about partnerships. People were thinking broader about who they might partner with. People were thinking broader rather than looking for the best financial planner in my town, who's the best financial planner in the country that could help me. And so I think we're in the right place at the right time on setting up a kind of a bigger vision that people could join. I think about 80% of Northwestern advisors are what I would call joiners rather than builders. They are their identity. They want to be the best financial planner they can be. They tolerate being a business owner. They tolerate being an employer. They don't love that part of the job. And what attracted them to Northwestern Mutual in the first place was their managing partner, managing director, the Grandam system, having a track to run on. And I think one day they woke up with 3, 4, 5, 10 employees and thought, I'm spending all my time running this business and not as much time in my financial planning. And I think joining a bigger firm like LiveWell gives them that time back to do what they love rather than having to spend all the time running their business. So that gives you a little bit of mixtapes of thoughts on how we landed here today.
Well, when I first was introduced to LiveWell, I just thought the brand was so sophisticated because I could see how all of that tied together, and it wasn't just something you slapped like together, but it really integrated into the experience of the brand. And I can imagine into the experience that your clients have who work with you. And I love the idea of the five capitals, and you've been able to like create a lot of amazing content around that idea and that core of your brand. And I think that's attractive as well, like obviously to other advisors and successful producers to be able to join something like Live Well and plug into that. And I do feel like you are the first team and person that I've seen this really national identity take place, which is really, really cool. Was it always your vision, Ben, to be a CEO of something like Live Well? Or because I know you started this a long time ago, like you personally started your practice a long time ago, was this always your personal vision, or how did that change over time too?
Well, I think everybody's personal vision when they start is just to make it, right? Is to like, I want to live to
The
be
bar is
here in
low.
a month
Yeah.
or a quarter or 6 months or a year. And so I don't think anybody has grandiose visions when they start. I think you're just trying to survive. I think
Mhm.
the vision morphed over time. I always thought inside of Northwestern Mutual, the way we do things was clunky. I was Beshear Financial doing joint work with Weeks Financial in the Kelly Financial Network, which was also part of Northwestern Mutual. And I think clients, Brene Brown says clarity is kindness. I think clients were always confused. It was not clear why are all these people in the meeting and why does everybody have all these names
Mm.
and I think there was just some simplicity in kind of creating a bigger tent that other people could join. And so I had a phase in 2015 where I was trying to create kind of a national producers group that didn't really work out because I think the bones weren't really there inside of Northwestern to do a national ensemble yet. But I
Mhm.
probably 15 years in, I started having that vision of creating something bigger. 2020 gave us that perfect moment in time to do it where I think the field was ready. And because of Zoom, it was easier to have a ensemble across network offices.
Yeah. This is a question that's being sparked in my head. What else did 2020 like change for you in the practice? This is a silly example, but I got married in 2020, so I was a COVID bride, and I feel like 2020, like with weddings, just really changed the game completely. Like, you don't need to invite your cousins. You don't need to do so many things. And that was such a refreshing time for me because I was like, oh, I just want to have this certain wedding and I don't need to do all these traditions and things that I don't really care about doing. And that time, I was a financial rep at that time in 2020, and it already was like changing every week before my eyes. Like the fact that I wouldn't have to like drive to someone and shake their hand, that was such a needed evolution in the industry. But what else did COVID or 2020 like shift for you personally with how you think about what's important, how you build the practice?
Well, I mean, I think that the evolution of even meeting with clients when you're a brand new rep, nobody would ever come to the office to meet you when I started in 2001. So you were always driving all over town to their office or their kitchen table. And then when you arrived, it maybe meant more people started coming to you. And then eventually, when COVID happened, nobody went anywhere. You just both stayed wherever you were. And I think that it almost became okay to have a Zoom meeting or a go-to meeting or whatever technology we were using at the time with an in-town client. Because back then, it was almost an insult if you recommended a Zoom meeting to somebody that was in town. It was like, you don't want to see me or you don't want to. And so I think it just gave everybody permission to do what works, to dress in what works, to I'm in a sweatshirt today, to run their business the way they wanted to. It was like a moment in time where like everybody got taken out of autopilot. Bill Perkins talks a lot in his book about and Die with Zero about autopilot. Everybody got taken out of autopilot and you kind of said, how do I want to dress? How do I want to brand? How do I meet with clients? How long are meetings? What is the real deliverable that they're looking for? When somebody comes into your office, you almost meet for an hour and a half out of just they drove over here, you want to make good use of the time. And you kind of realize like on Zoom, it's like the meeting just ends when everybody's done talking. You don't have to do the intro and outro, and meetings became 45 minutes. And you really got down to the brass tacks of just delivering value. And I think it was just a great time to reinvent things. I told my partner, Brad, we need to get clients back in as soon as we can to the office. And he's like, why? Like let them come back in if they want to, but don't force it. It would have taken 10 years for our older clients to adopt to this newer technology. I think it was a great time to just reinvent the business and really just do what made sense.
I totally agree. And looking back on that time and kind of where we are now 6 years later, that's kind of crazy. We're already 6 years out of that. Um, where technology and things are at right now, I don't think this industry could have handled that without that disruption of everything you're talking about. So let's go into what LiveWell looks like today, knowing that, that time created a really unique opportunity that you saw and you and your partners. So you're in 15 cities today across 10 states. So take me behind the curtain a little bit. What does it actually take operationally to build at that scale? I'm sure you could say a few things on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the interesting thing about Northwestern Mutual, and I think that's most of the audience that'll be listening to this, is everybody has their firm as it exists today. And so I think the challenge when we were building LiveWell is to say, we probably don't need to rebuild what they already have. Most of these firms that end up merging with us have one paraplanner, have one insurance ops person, and they have one investment ops person, and they or themselves and one other lead advisor are running a team of 4 or 5 people. In general, they have people that have been with them for a while. And in general, one of the first things people say, Northwestern Mutual advisors are great people. I want all my team members to keep their jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And almost universally that is said. And so we had to have some humble flexibility when we started to look at this thing and say, you know what, we're going to build around what the average team has rather than build something from scratch. Maybe if we were all starting this, we have 104 employees today. If we were starting this from brand new, we might build it differently. But what we tried to do is just build services around what everybody had, and we let each city remain a pod. And so we've said that financial planning, investment ops, money movement, opening accounts, insurance, underwriting, insurance service all stays in your city. And then we're going to build services around you. So that's somebody to run the firm operations, P&L, payroll. Second, that's somebody to run all the portfolios. Third, that's somebody to run advisor technology and all our services. Fourth, that's somebody to run marketing. And fifth, that's somebody to run what we call human capital, training, recruiting, bringing people onto the team. Those 5 things, almost nobody thought they could do better locally. And so what we tried to do is build structure around what the average team needed rather than try to build a bunch of services that they were not asking for. And so I think one of the things that is important whenever you start something is being able to pivot to what you're actually hearing in feedback, because we were going to centralize everything.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what the average team that was coming in wanted. And so we were able to pivot, provide some services, build out a financial model that works really, really well inside of Northwestern. Our average new partner is between 35 and 50. They've been in the business 15 years. They're doing between $1 million and $2 million in revenue. And so this worked very well for that specific avatar, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's so interesting because from an outsider's perspective, and I'm very operationally minded, I've always looked at big teams like LiveWell and gone like, how do they do that? Because I lived through an ensemble and kind of like the back end pieces of that, and I know how much goes into that whole process, and I've wondered how you create scale like you do. But I love how you have this flexibility of, whatever, like keeping things local and centralized to whatever they're doing, but then you roll them into these non-negotiables and you provide value in that area. And I can see how that creates some cleanliness in the transition and like what they get from you, and they still get, some of their own things as well. So that's really, really interesting to hear more about that. It's almost like you're building your own, you have essentially a franchise model within Northwestern Mutual. So in your words, Ben, what makes someone becoming a LiveWell advisor different than like creating their own ensemble or even trying to build their own like within Northwestern? What does LiveWell offer that is different than Northwestern Mutual for that type of advisor that you work with?
Well, I mean, I do think, I think there's a couple of things. I think we are a very good blend of having autonomy, but then also mix with a bigger firm scale to run on. One of my mentors said the great thing about a bigger team is he was talking about he had 2 or 3 houses, and he wasn't saying this in a braggadocious way. He was saying, I don't need the lights on all the time, but when I go and flick a light switch in one of my houses, I needed to be able to turn on. And he said, bigger teams can afford to have the lights on all the time because there's somebody that always needs the lights on. But as an individual advisor, you couldn't afford to have all those light switches turned on all the time. And I thought that light switch analogy was a great analogy for capacity. And so I think what we do is we keep some amount of autonomy with that advisor, but they have bigger team capacity. Also, we have some, you said the word non-negotiables, some non-negotiables. So if you think about the 5 things that our advisors have to do the same, they have to use the same brand. There are some teams that is this team powered by LiveWell. We do not do any of that. I think it's confusing.
So confusing.
Everybody's got to use the same brand. Number 2, everybody's got to use the same financial planning process. Number 3, everybody's got to use the same portfolio strategy. Number 4, everybody has to use the same fee schedule. And number 5, everybody has to use the same segmentation and service tiers, what you deliver for that fee schedule. And you'd be amazed if you get those 5 things right and you get alignment in those 5 things. You can give some flexibility around the things that are not in those 5 things, but really get a lot of alignment around everybody moving in the same direction together.
So if someone listening to this is thinking about ensembling or merging, I want them to take note of those 5 things, because I feel like you've really, you've nailed that. And I've not seen anything as clean or defined. I had a question, but it left my brain. Dang it. Here it is. How do you evaluate acquisitions? Is it more of an inbound thing, people saying, I want to be a part of LiveWell, or are you doing some of that on your own, or a mix of both?
Well, first off, because we're talking marketing, we do very much have an internal marketing strategy and an external marketing strategy as you think about the Northwestern Mutual. And inside of each, we do unique things. I think most firms don't think, is this internal or is this external? And if you have internal constituents you're trying to market to, think 8,000 Northwestern Mutual advisors, or more specifically, the top 1 to 2,000 Northwestern advisors. That channel needs to have different things you're doing in it. And I viewed it as what we call karma capitalism, where inside of Northwestern, we do a bunch of free things for the better of the field. And so we do a 10X webinar that 800 people a month join that is just free investment training. We do a weekly newsletter called Money Monday. We do a monthly newsletter called Dr. Dollar. And so one of the things we're trying to do is just karma capitalism, and the fact that we don't have any guarantee it will come back to us, but we know ultimately if we are doing good for the field, probably something good business comes out of that. And if not, maybe we made some new friends along the way. And so usually internally inside of Northwestern, things come back to us in 3 ways. They come back to us in the form of coaching. We have a coaching business. They come back to us in the form of joint work. We probably do $20 to $50 million a year in joint work from the Northwestern field. And third, they come back to us in the form of partnership. And most of our partners reach out to us. We are proactively trying to reach out to people we want to partner with, but most of our pipeline right now is reaching out to us. And one of the benefits of that is if they've been in our training for 4, 5, 6 years, you have this positive adverse selection in the fact that they believe what we believe. They've been in our trainings. They like doing planning the way we've been doing. And so you have this person that might have sat in 50, 60, 70 hours of training that feels like they already know us. They already know the brand. They already believe what we believe. And so you're starting that on the 50-yard line. And so we have some ways that we evaluate them from a practice standpoint, and how we score out the health of their practice. But the other great thing inside of Northwestern that can't be missed is everybody knows everybody. So there's a big asshole tax here. So if you've been a bad person, there's 1,000 people that will show up to warn us about somebody. If you've been a great person, there's 1,000 people that will brag on you and say how nice you've been and say how generous you've been or whatever. And so you have this weird thing. Also, the data is we're all using the same reports. I can ask for your fact sheet or your book of business report. There's this safety in doing M&A inside this ecosystem that
makes sense.
Almost protects the accuracy of the data, protects us from a culture standpoint. And also, if you think about M&A and partnership, I don't have to repaper any of the accounts. They're already in the same tech stack. They're already in the same CRM. We already know all the same lingo. It's like all of these deals are on the 50-yard line versus we were going out to acquire a firm outside of Northwestern. Every one of those things is starting on your own 1-yard line. And you really don't know anybody that knows the person. You can ask for references, but that's flawed in a million ways. And so we love our model inside of this system specifically.
It is so brilliant. And you hit all the points. You've got the same system, you speak the same language, there's like warmth there. And that's really a nice thing that you've seen that opportunity, and that's why you can scale like you can, I think. I have to compliment you because you have such a great marketing mind, and not all advisors or CEOs have that, I think, way of thinking. Like you've invested in this webinar series and this coaching group, but it's literally been marketing for you at the same time. Your brand, that goes without saying, like everything we were just talking about. Where does that come from in you?
Thank you, by the way. I'm not totally sure I was a marketing major, but I was only a marketing major because I wasn't smart enough to be a finance major at the time because I couldn't get into finance classes. No offense to us marketing people, but
I think we're smarter, Ben. We're more creative.
maybe we are. Maybe we are. I've said that. I haven't found anybody that agrees with me, but I think I've always been interested in like, how can I do something? How can I set up something that has multiple payoffs at the same time? So how can it be? I think the best marketing is free. Like, it doesn't cost me anything to like do a monthly training other than an hour of time. And there's so many payoffs. I have a payoff in the fact that if I train on something, I probably get better training on it. I get better at my craft doing it. That's number one. Two, I get some psychic income by getting to give back. And then I have the kind of the three other ways, either through coaching, joint work, or partnership. And you just look at like, what are the things that don't require a ton of time investment, that may require no money investment, that have multiple payoffs, that is just sitting in plain sight that nobody's doing. And so that's one, is what can you do? When I was a managing director, everybody that left Northwestern in their exit interview would say, you guys suck at investment training. You were really good at teaching me insurance, but you're not good at teaching me investment training. So we started doing investment training just just to fix a problem on some feedback we'd received. The other thing that I think as it relates to marketing is people don't give it structure and give it timelines in a way that makes it easy to implement. Like everything we do at LiveWell is like really simple. Like our newsletter always has 3 parts. It's market update, firm update, lifestyle update, because you have kind of 3 kinds of clients. You have clients that want to know about the market. You have clients that want to know what's going on in the firm. And you have some clients that just want to know interesting books we're reading or things we're doing. And some clients that care about all 3. And so we realized with those 3 voices, we could talk to 100% of what most of our clients were interested in. And every single newsletter is those 3 parts. And the newsletter comes out on the first Monday of each month. And so, you give it structure and then you give it a timeline. Our podcast comes out on the first Tuesday of each month. John's Dr. Dollar newsletter comes out on the second Tuesday of each month. Money Monday comes out on Mondays, so it would be easy to remember. Yep. And so if you think about these things, it's almost like giving structure and then giving when you do it, and then you assign an owner on the team. I think most advisors are just sitting there in their office thinking that they have to reinvent the wheel. It's almost like pick what the format is, pick when you're going to do it, and assign an owner, and then do it forever. And I think too often we make it so much more complicated than that. And those kind of formats and systems have worked really well for us, because in some ways you just need consistency and at-bats of doing it. I've written thousands of blogs at this point because we just have a system for how we do it and when we do it. And you're not thinking about whether you're going to do it or not. You just know it's Monday. It's Monday, it's blog day. And so I'm probably written out through August, but we try to just do those things in a way where it makes it just simple to implement.
Well, I'm hearing a few things that I want to summarize there. And something that I hear when I talk to advisors, when I'm talking to them about like marketing or starting their own content strategy, immediately there's this sense of overwhelm and this sense of like, I don't want to do that. I just want to outsource that. And I see that really cause some problems, because if you try to do marketing by just hiring someone and checking a box and not looking at it, not paying attention to it, you don't get the level of output and quality that I think you want, right? Because if you're going to make an investment, you want that to do something for your clients and for your business. And so what I think is really cool about what you just described is a very practical way for and then you look back, a year, 2 years, and you have this huge bank of content that has absolutely, we've talked about ROI in other discussions, you and I, but like that does give you an ROI, even if you can't link directly to, oh, this person read this Money Monday article and therefore they're my client. It rarely works like that in our industry. We're not like shoes targeting people on Instagram, where you can directly click like tie things back like that. But I think what's really powerful about what you just described is, one, you get the learning from it. You're serving more people at scale. And if you just put some simple, you said that word a few times, simple habits, structures, systems in place, you really do create this brand. And that's what I see that you have done, that LiveWell has done. And look at what it's done for your practice. You've created this massive attraction strategy, both internally and externally. And so I'm a really big fan of that foresight that you had at the time. And I think personally, if advisors don't start thinking that way and start doing that, I think there's going to be a really big gap between advisors getting left behind and the ones who are really leaning into more of those types of strategies.
But you have this other thing that I don't think anybody's seeing yet on really knowing your voice on, if you look at all of the different AI that's coming, we can load 1,000 blogs, 50 podcasts, all of our content into AI, and AI can answer questions in the LiveWell voice in a way that I don't think people are thinking about if they haven't been making content. And so I think there's going to be this whole benefit that comes from having all of this content out there. Because if you think about the future where we're bringing on a new partner, rather than them having to call me, they can just, we could have a what would LiveWell do button in their SharePoint site. And I think it's a benefit that nobody's seeing yet from having your own content.
Oh my gosh. And you can't just turn it on and be like, I have all my own content. It does take time. What are so I couldn't agree more with what you said. What are some other predictions that you have just in your unique spot of being this leader of this giant successful firm within Northwestern? You see a lot of things. I would love to hear your predictions with AI or just elsewhere for the industry and advisors in the next 3 to 5 years.
I think the interesting thing, we've written a lot about predictions. I have blogged about this, so I have a cheat code. But I think the biggest change is going to be, I think AI is going to change advice in a major way, and I don't think it's going to change it in a bad way. But you can see this thing that's already happening, like your client that you've been dealing with for 10 years that a month ago couldn't remember what a mutual fund is now asking you the smartest questions in the history of their life.
Yeah.
And if you have clients that are using AI and you're not using AI, you're in trouble with client retention. So I've seen this trend where people think they're worried about being replaced by technology. And so they ignore the technology, but then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that they are going to get replaced by the technology. So technology will replace people that put their head in the sand. I think that's an obvious prediction, but I'm just amazed that all of the amazing AI out there that's not getting used, if you're not using it 20 times a day as an advisor, you're just missing it. I love the voice version of every AI, where if I'm writing a blog, I might dictate a 10-minute message. I'd like to make this point, this point, this point, this point, but I want it to come from this angle, this angle, this angle, do it in this order. And then I now have a rough draft of my blog all in my voice. And so I think if you're not using AI, I think you are in trouble in ways that you don't even understand yet, because I think if you're not getting good at prompts and good at double checking your work and good at using the tool, I think you're going to wake up one day where these tools have evolved even more and be in trouble. That's one. Two, I think big teams are going to continue to win. That might sound self-fulfilling or self-promoting, but I think bigger teams are going to continue to win. And I think technology...
Tell me more about that specifically. What does winning mean in that context?
I just think on a bigger team, we have somebody on our team that understands international tax law, and somebody that understands COLI, and somebody that understands charitable giving, you have somebody on our team that has done something with everything. And I just think the bigger teams, through scale, through the ability to create a think tank, through the ability to hire better talent, are going to continue to win. And so I think bigger teams are going to continue to evolve. And then I think the bigger technology gets, I think the advisor and the tech are going to be the product. The product is no longer 65 Life or Signature Portfolio. The product is the technology and platform and the advisor. And I think it's going to put pressure on companies like Northwestern Mutual that have legacy technology issues, that I think they're going to have to start thinking of their technology as their product, not the products they manufacture. And I think
Yeah.
the companies that miss that evolution are going to be in trouble, because I think the clients are going to look at the products as tools, but they're going to look at the platform and the advisor as the product. The product is really the advisor, the technology, and what we used to call product are going to be tools within the plan. And I think that you can just see people missing that fine point every time as they're designing for the future.
Is so well put, of like, what is the product? And I've had similar thoughts because, with AI and the access to that and how that's changed consumers and how consumers, your clients, right? Like you said, the example, they're asking different questions. They're seeing you as they're putting you in a different spot in their brain. You're no longer the only option that they have for financial advice. And I always encourage advisors to ask their clients how they're using AI and have a conversation in your next review. Just say, hey, well, obviously AI is a big topic. We have a philosophy, and craft your own philosophy on it. So we have our own philosophy, but we want to ask you, how are you using AI? And have you ever asked it for financial advice? Have you ever, has it ever told you something? Like, I encourage my clients that I'm working with to have that conversation with the clients for them to learn, because you said it right. Like, if you don't adapt and change and learn, this time is going to go by that there's going to be these people who are adapting, changing, and learning, and they are going to be massively, massively ahead. And you might not even know that that's happening yet, but it is actively happening. So I love how you said that about the product. Are you able to I feel like we could have like an offline conversation or maybe an online conversation about just like legacy and what I'm seeing in the field and what I'm seeing out of the field too. But for you specifically, since giving back to the field is one of your priorities, are you able to kind of have these types of conversations with other leaders in the field?
Yeah, I'm in a lot of those conversations. I'm also serving on FRA. I mean, I think in some ways it's not entirely Northwestern's fault in the fact that
Yeah.
if you're a brand new platform, you don't have a whole life policy from 1961 that you have to worry about servicing and worry about the data showing up correctly. But I do think that if you think about friction in our system, there is more friction in our technology system between each task. If you look at kind of every chair in our organization, I look at our operations people and I look at our planning people and I look at our advisor people, and you look at how often is somebody doing a task that is not their best use because these platforms don't talk to each other. I think there's 30% in every day at every single desk of inefficiency. And I think that's probably not where we need to be long term. And also, no technology is perfect. I know I think the mistake Northwestern Mutual advisors make is they assume that if I was somewhere else, technology would be free and I wouldn't be paying anything and everything would just
Isn't
be,
that free, honey?
yeah,
Yeah. It's
everything
not
would
free
be
for you at
total,
Northwestern.
right. Everything would be frictionless and easy and magical. So it's not perfect anywhere, but we could certainly do better at making it more effective here. And I think the company's moving faster than they ever have, and we are appreciative of that. But they're moving faster than they've ever had in a period in time where competitors are moving faster than they ever have either. So if you're 10 yards behind and you're still both running at the same speed, you're never going to catch up. And so I think there's some transformational changes that I believe company leadership is looking at, and we're looking forward to that.
Well, I'm grateful for your perspective and involvement there. All right, for the sake of time, let's move into some fun lightning round questions. I feel like I could pick your brain longer. All right. I like to ask this question. What's the best piece of advice that you have ever ignored?
Man, there's a lot there. That's not I don't even know if that's a lightning round question, but I would say when apologizing, listen with the same amount of passion as I'm speaking. I think it's hard to listen with the same amount of passion you speak with. So, I'm usually just waiting to get my argument in. And so that's one that I've missed a lot over and over and over again.
Still working on it.
Yeah.
That's good. Passionate listening. I'll think about that this week. What is something that most CEOs get wrong, in your opinion?
I mean, I think a lot of CEOs, maybe just in the financial advising space, aren't thinking big enough. And I think most of the time you can create a 5-year vision in a spreadsheet, but not a 10-year vision. And so I find most of us as we've said often, we set our short-term vision too high and our long-term vision too low. And if your long-term vision isn't big enough, most great, successful advisors can't see room for themselves in your firm. So unless your vision's here, you can't actually recruit great people because they can't see themselves inside of that vision. And so I think there's actually a selflessness in creating a big enough vision that other people can see themselves in it. And I think people think it's the other way around. Big vision's about ego, but I think big vision is about giving room for other people to join what you want to do. And I think most CEOs, especially in our industry, think there's almost some nobility from thinking small. And I think it's the other way around.
I love that. That's really, really interesting. I haven't thought about that before. What are you most excited about right now?
Man, I would say I'm most excited about Northwestern Mutual fixing our technology platform, but because I'm not in charge of that, I cannot be excited about that. On a personal front, I'm excited about, or on a business front, I'm excited about some of the amazing teams joining LiveWell. We had 3 amazing teams just join on 4/1, and we have 3 new teams joining on 7/1. So it's really fun when you're getting just brand new, awesome people on the team. And then on a personal front, we just have some fun travel set up this summer as a family, and I'm looking forward to some time off.
Where are you going?
We're going to Florida as a family, but we're also going to Africa on a part mission trip, part safari, and part beach. So there's like 8
Are you going to South Africa?
No, we're going to Africa. Where the beach town we're going to is Zanzibar, which is a
Okay.
place I'd never heard of before. But anyway, so should be fun.
That sounds incredible. Wow. And how old are your kids now?
I have a son that is just about to turn 16 and a daughter that just turned 12. So going into 7th grade and going into 10th grade.
So fun. Wow. Sounds like a fun time in the Ben Beshear life. And then when you're not building the empire that is LiveWell, what are you doing?
We are very busy with our kids. We're in lacrosse and soccer season right now. So there's a lot going on with our kids. And then I'm back on the school board of our kids' school. And just life is really busy at home right now. So it's really fun and very interesting, but there's very little space in each day.
If you could have a day to yourself with nothing on your calendar, what would you go do?
Lindsay and I love to travel. It would be traveling right now. It would be if I was just in town, I'm kind of tired. I would binge Your Friends and Neighbors on Apple TV. That's what I would do to date myself right now.
I think you should clear the calendar and make some space for it. Ben is sick, everyone.
That's right.
I love it. And then last question, who is someone else I should have on the show?
That's a great question. Inside of Northwestern?
Could be, yeah.
I just think Adam Riegel is endlessly entertaining. So
I don't know
who
him.
I would have on. That's who
Why did you pick him?
You'll see when you interview him. You'll have a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, Ben, this has been really, really incredible. You've given me some nuggets to really think about, like the big vision piece and the passionate listening and a handful of other things. But I know you're on LinkedIn. I know you have your LiveWell podcast. Anywhere else that people can connect with you in LiveWell Capital?
Yeah. Most of the content we're putting out is on LinkedIn, and the podcast is called Life, Money, and Living Well. And our coaching and content website, I believe, is called livewell10x.com, but it's new, so that could be wrong. So hopefully I got that right.
I'll get the link and I'll put all of that in my show notes.
Great.
Thanks, Ben. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to the show. If this conversation resonated with you or you learned something new, make sure you follow the podcast so you don't miss out on future episodes. And do me a favor, like and subscribe and share this episode with a friend. Comment on anything that you want to see or hear more of in the future as well. You can also stay connected by subscribing to the Wonder Weekly newsletter and connect with me, Emily, on LinkedIn at Emily Armstrong or Instagram, Emily Armstrong 2.0 for more insights on building modern client service firms. Until next time, keep on adapting, modernizing, and growing beyond referrals.